Hello and welcome to Lesson 2, Who Can I Fly For? This is an in-depth look at the types of airlines, aircraft, airline bases, and schedules. The Lesson 2 objectives are, we're going to learn the difference between commercial, charter, corporate, and private airlines. You'll be proficient in schedules, flight attendant bases, reserve, and commuting. You will be able to make a list of the top 10 airlines that you would like to work for. You will understand aircraft types, size, and layout. In aviation, there are 4 categories: commercial, charter, corporate, and private. We're going to talk about commercial airlines to begin with. We're going to talk about major, national, and regional airlines. Commercial flights are operated by commercial airlines. These flights run to a regular schedule, and people or groups can buy tickets or seats on this flight. Now, when you think of commercial airlines, you generally think of major airlines. And when you think of major airlines, you generally think of the top 3: Delta, United, and American. Major airlines are actually defined as scheduled airlines with over $1 billion in revenue in a fiscal year. The definition of major, regional, and national airlines are determined by their revenue within a certain year. But under major, we have scheduled airlines. A scheduled airline is an airline that operates between airports, and they're governed by the route dispersal guidelines and have a pre-approved timetable. A scheduled flight means that tickets to this flight are sold, and they're sold via various sales channels around the world. Now, what that basically means is there's a schedule. Each airline operates within a certain schedule. There's a timetable. You call up the airline or you look online and you see the flights. You see the flights that are scheduled. Now, let's talk about what airlines are major airlines. Again, we have United, Delta, and American. But you also have Southwest, JetBlue, and Alaska Airlines. These are all airlines that have over $1 billion in revenue. Now, national carriers. National carriers typically fly in the US, Canada, and Mexico. Now, you may think of them as low-cost carriers or cost-cutting carriers. They're Spirit, Hawaiian, Allegiant, and Frontier. Regional airlines. Now, this is an airline that you may not be familiar with. A regional carrier is one with operating revenues of $20 million to $100 million in contract with a major carrier. Now, as you see, it doesn't say scheduled airline. Yes, they run on a schedule, but they run on the major airline's schedule. Each of these airlines contract with a major carrier. They are not standalone. You cannot buy tickets with any of the regional carriers. Regional airlines feed passengers from smaller markets to major airlines in the larger markets. And these are regional airlines. Again, you cannot call up Mesa Airlines and buy a ticket. You cannot go on SkyWest website and buy a ticket. They operate under a contract with a major airline. Now, let's define mainline to begin with before we talk further about the relationship between major airlines and regional airlines. The definition by Wikipedia is a mainline flight is a flight operated by an airline's main operating unit, rather than by regional alliances, regional code shares, regional subsidiaries, or wholly owned subsidiaries offering low-cost operations. Now, what does that all mean? Let's tie it all together. American Airlines. American Airlines is the major airline. PSA, Republic, Piedmont, Envoy, SkyWest, and Mesa are regionals. American is the main line, and the regionals are American Eagle. Even though SkyWest is the name of the company, the flight attendants, the pilots, the customer service agents, they work for SkyWest, but they fly under American Eagle. The side of the aircraft says American Eagle. Now let's take a look at Delta. Delta, again, that's the major aircraft, or major airline, excuse me. SkyWest, Republic, Endeavor, and GoJet are the regionals. Delta's the main line, and the regionals are Delta Connection. Now, United, the major airline. GoJet, Air Wisconsin, SkyWest, Republic, Mesa, and Commute Air are the regionals. United is mainline, and the regionals are United Express. Now, you probably notice some of the same airlines on each of those slides. Republic Airways works for American, United, and Delta, or they contract with American, United, and Delta. So if you work for Republic Airways, you could be working American Eagle, you could be working United Express, or you could be working Delta Connection. If you work for Mesa, Mesa contracts with American and United. SkyWest, they contract with all three. Now, you not only get flying benefits on your airline, let's say you work for Republic, you're going to get your flying benefits on Republic Airways, but you're also going to get flying benefits on the airline that you contract with, which as an employee of Republic would be American, United, and Delta. That's a pretty nice perk. American Airlines employees, they get flight benefits on American and American Eagle. But if you work for SkyWest or Republic, you're going to get flying benefits on all three airlines. Again, pretty nice perk. Now, what about Southwest and JetBlue? They are the two majors without regional carriers. And Alaska has one regional carrier, excuse me, and that's Horizon Air. Now, let's talk about some other airlines. These are airlines that do not fall into one particular category, and I have titled them Miscellaneous Airlines. We have Sun Country. Now, it's a small national airline for leisure and vacation traveling, and they travel to 50 destinations. Now, these airlines, Sun Country, Breeze, Silver, Contour, and Eastern, you can buy tickets on them. Silver Airways is a small regional airline, and it's a regional airline because it falls within the revenue guidelines. But it's a small regional airline that sells tickets and does not contract with a major airline. Breeze, it's a brand new airline, and it's beginning service in 2021. Eastern, it's a small airline flying to small underserved international regions. Contour, it's a small regional airline that sells tickets and also does not contract with a major airline. All of these airlines have flight attendants as well. So, now let's talk about the aircraft. Airbus and Boeing are the two major manufacturers of the airlines that the commercial industry, the majors and charters and the larger airlines have. They mainly fly Airbus and Boeing. There are a few McDonnell Douglas airplanes still out there, but I would say well over 75%, if not more, do fly Airbus and Boeing aircraft. Here's a Boeing aircraft comparison. We start with the 737 aircraft, go all the way up to the 747 aircraft, and as you can see, 132 passengers all the way up to 467 passengers. That's a lot of people. Now, all Boeing aircraft start with a minimum of 3 flight attendants. So if you work with an airline that flies the larger aircraft, you're going to have a minimum of 3 flight attendants on your flight. Now, each airline configures the seating and the layout of the aircraft to their own specifications. So not every aircraft is equal. A United Airlines aircraft may look totally different on the inside than a Southwest. Now, I say totally different, but yes, they're going to have an aisle and they're going to have seats and they're going to have a galley. But one might have 8 first-class seats, one might have 12. One might have a galley in the middle of the aircraft, and an aircraft could have the galley in the back of the aircraft. So every airline configures it to their own liking and their own specifications. The number of the seats on the aircraft determine the number of flight attendants. Let's take a look at the Airbus A320 series. As you can see right here, these aircraft hold between 107 and 240 passengers. Now, primarily, the nationals and the majors fly the 124 passenger aircraft all the way up to the 240 passenger aircraft. The Airbus are flown by majors and nationals. Take a look down here at the A380. It holds 540 passengers. That's a lot of people. And they have 21 flight attendants. Now, as you can also see, that there are no U.S. carriers that are currently flying the A320 aircraft. They are all the foreign carriers. Now, let's take a look at this Boeing 737 flown by United. This is United's configuration. It has 2 pilots and 3 flight attendants. The 737 is kind of the workhorse of the Boeing. Many majors, many nationals have 737 in their fleet. It's a great aircraft. Now take a look at the Lufthansa A380. Now I'll show you a foreign carrier. This is a German carrier because as I said before, there are no U.S. airplanes that are or airlines that are currently flying the A380 aircraft. Big difference between the configuration of this A380 and the Boeing 737. This aircraft has 4 pilots and 21 flight attendants. Now we're going to talk about the smaller aircraft that the regionals fly. They fly the Embraer and the Canadair regional jets, the ERJs and the CRJs. The CRJs carry between 40 passengers and 90 passengers. If you're a flight attendant on the CRJ 200 with 40 passengers, you're going to be the only flight attendant on board the aircraft. If you're on the CRJ 900 with 90 passengers, there will be 2 flight attendants on board. The ERJs carry between 37 and 122 passengers. Major and national airlines do not generally carry fewer than 100 passengers, and regionals carry between 20 and 100 passengers. Therefore, they fly much smaller aircraft than the majors or the nationals do. Now let's take a look visually at the aircraft. As you can see right here, there's a big difference between the smaller aircraft and a larger aircraft. Here we have a McDonnell Douglas DC-10 flown by Air France and the Airbus 319. United 777, and here's a Boeing 737. So two Boeings, Boeing 777, Boeing 737. Here we have the A380, holds 540 passenger. Here's Delta Connection. This is the regional for Delta. This is a CRJ 700. It's going to hold around 70 to 90 passengers. Big difference here. Here's an Airbus 340 and an ERJ 195. Okay, we're going to change lanes here for just a moment. Here's a category of airlines that are fractional jets. They're small charter airlines, private airplanes that can be rented. They often do not have flight attendants, or the flight attendants that are used are contract or freelance flight attendants. These are flight attendants that generally have had a commercial background. They already have experience. They have their own certification. They have gone and paid for more yearly certification, and they contract themselves out to be flight attendants when needed. Freelance flight attendants do the same, if not more, than commercial flight attendants do. They handle it all. They are responsible for getting themselves training, getting themselves employed because they are self-employed, and they market themselves to different fixed-based operations and again different corporations or different people to get the jobs. The corporate flight attendant or the contract flight attendant paid training. There are 3 companies that I've listed here, but there are more companies than this. They offer training. They offer training for corporate, for contractual and freelance flight attendants. It's anywhere from $8,000, $10,000 on up. You can choose what aircraft you want to be certified on, or you can become certified in all aircraft. But again, generally they do like to start with flight attendants that already have some experience in aviation. Now, if you go to a flight safety and become certified, and then you are hired by Delta Airlines, you still have to go through their FAA certified initial training. So the training that you got at flight safety, even though it's valuable because all learning is good, it is not necessary because they're going to train you. Delta's going to train you on how they do that, how they do their evacuations, where they put their safety equipments, how their airplanes are configured. They're going to train you in Delta's way. So if you work for Delta and decide you want to go and work for, let's say, Republic, you have to now go through Republic's initial training, their FAA certified training. Every airline must train you and must give you their FAA certified training. Charter airlines. Charter airlines are unscheduled flying. no part of a regular airline routing system. You cannot buy tickets from a charter airline. You have to go through a broker. You have to book through a broker. They carry sports teams, special groups, music tours. You can charter an airline to take your family to a private island for a family reunion. Charters often train you. They will put you through their FAA certified initial training. Charter is commercial, but commercial is not charter. I know this is very confusing, so don't get caught up in the details of this. The term charter is loosely defined and can range from a single customer paying to use an aircraft, expensive taxi, or to a tour operator paying for a block of seats on a regularly scheduled airline, to an airline renting an aircraft from another. So there's different variations of charters. In commercial flight, there are more than one passengers traveling together, okay? More than one passengers traveling together, whereas in a charter flight, you have the privilege of traveling alone or in the group of people selected by you. Here are a few charter airlines that are well known for hiring flight attendants. iAero used to be Swift Air, so if you see Swift Air, do not get confused. They just rebranded. Atlas, Omni, Extra, Elite, World Atlantic, and National. Charter airlines are the difference in charters versus your commercial. I look at it this way. In commercial, you get flying benefits. If you choose on a Tuesday on your day off to go from LA to Hawaii, if there are seats available, you can non-rev, free of charge. On a charter, the one drawback is this. You cannot fly non-rev on your own airline. Now, this isn't written in stone because every airline is different, even the charters. They may have their own set of rules. But if the Rolling Stones are chartering Omni Air to do a world tour, you can't just hop on board that aircraft to bum a seat to go on vacation. That's not how that works. But they do have reciprocal agreements and benefits with other airlines, such as American and Delta and United and Allegiant and Spirit. They will let charter flight attendants non-rev on their airlines. So you do have that reciprocal agreement. Now, one of the perks of being with a charter is you do make a little bit more money, and you do have the excitement of working for, let's say, a celebrity, or being on world tour with Pearl Jam or Justin Bieber, or somebody that hires a charter to fly them around on their tour, or to fly your favorite sports team. Um, uh, that's a little bit different. Now, not to say that somebody like, let's say, United Airlines, they do get charters. Your commercial airlines do have charters. Sports teams will contract with a major airline to provide them with service. And that is something that you can bid for and your seniority can hold. But generally, as a charter, that is what they do. And that is a pretty exciting part of being a charter flight attendant. Charter aircraft are typically your larger aircraft, but it can range from very small aircraft to large aircraft, depending on what you, as the charter client, needs. They also configure the aircraft within the aircraft. They configure it exactly how you want it. So if you charter this aircraft to take you to that private island for your family reunion, you may want it to have 10 seats and a bed and a full bar area. Well, they're going to quote you a price, and as long as you can pay that price, they're going to configure the aircraft exactly how you want to configure it. But generally, they do fly the larger aircraft. Corporate aviation. Here are just a few examples of corporations that have their own in-flight service. They have their own aviation department. Now, they may or may not have flight attendants, and they may or may not train you. So if they don't offer you the training, that's where you would go to Flight Safety or Da Vinci and buy your own certification and your own training. Private aviation. Private aviation is a totally different animal. It is a Part 91 operator, and it's only permitted to provide flights for non-commercial purposes. They do work under the guidelines of the FAA, but their flight attendants are not required to be FAA certified, and they're not even required to have a flight attendant. So let's say you work for Mark Cuban, you're his assistant, and he has a flight. He may want you as his assistant to be his flight attendant. And that is definitely legal and all under the guise of the FAA. So, pretty exciting work. Now, private and corporate, again, generally want you to have some background in aviation. So, go fly for the commercial sector for a few years, get some experience underneath your belt, and then, hey, if you want to go private, go private. Private and corporate aircraft are generally very small. Don't get used to all the leather. If you're on a Boeing 737, there will not be any leather on your toilet seat like it is in some of the private aircraft. But they are generally very small aircraft. But I think it would be quite exciting to work as a private flight attendant. Now, keep in mind this too. If you are a private or a corporate flight attendant, you are at their beck and call. You are on call for whatever they need and whenever they need you. Now, hubs versus bases. Airline hubs or hub airports are used by airlines to concentrate passenger traffic and flight operations. Think of it as like the corporate airport. A crew base, on the other hand, or domicile, is the city and associated airport a flight attendant is assigned to. This is the domicile is where all your trips will begin and all your trips will end. The misconception about bases are that airlines do not have bases in every city they fly into, or that flight attendant, a lot of people think that airlines do have bases in every city they fly into, but they don't. Airlines do not have bases in every city they fly into. A hub is not the same thing as a base. For example, you are based in Chicago at O'Hare Airport, and you are a flight attendant with United. Chicago O'Hare Airport is your airline home. That's your domicile, your base, your home. That's where you're going to start your trips. That's where you're going to finish your trips. You will live in the Chicago area or you will commute to Chicago O'Hare Airport. You can drive or you can fly. You just have to get to Chicago Airport for your flight. You will report for duty or check in at the UAL flight attendant domicile, which is located within the O'Hare Airport. United flies more than 4,500 flights per day to more than 300 cities across 5 continents. United has 13 flight attendant bases. Right here, 13 flight attendant bases. Therefore, just because United flies into your hometown does not mean you can work out of your hometown. Only if your hometown is one of these 13 cities and you are assigned to that base. So if you live in Denver and you're assigned to Denver's base, then you live in your hometown and you fly out of your hometown base. Now, if you live in Denver, but your base is San Francisco, then that means you must commute to your base. Let's say you live in Charlotte, North Carolina here, and you're based in San Francisco. Then you've got to commute to your base. Now, since we're talking about commuting, let's talk about non-revenue travel. As an employee of the airline, one of the greatest benefits that you will receive and a privilege is to be able to fly non-revenue. That means that as long as there's a seat open and there are no weight restrictions on the aircraft, you can fly without purchasing a full fare ticket. This is also known as space available. Now, the non-revenue seats are given out on a seniority basis, space available, meaning that all the paying passengers are going to get on the aircraft before you do. But if there are seats left, you get those seats. You get first class seats, business class, coach seats, whatever seats are available in seniority order, the non-revenues get. It's a pretty nice perk, very good privilege. And one of the reasons that people do work for the airlines. So let's talk about commuting. One of the greatest benefits of working for the airline is living anywhere you want to. As long as you get to work on time, the airlines do not care where you live. And because you have the non-revenue or flying free benefit, flight attendants often live anywhere in the world. And they often commute by flying to their base using their non-revenue benefits. Remember, you do not drive to work and back home 5 days in a row per week. You may fly out on a Monday, fly back on a Wednesday, and not fly again until the next Monday. So even if you have to drive 3 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours, you're only doing that flying or driving to work once, driving home once in a week's time. If we use the previous example and you're based in Chicago, you may choose to live in your hometown of Chicago and be based out of Chicago, or if you live in Des Moines, you may choose to live in Des Moines and fly to Chicago O'Hare Airport, where you're based, as long as you're there in time for work. Again, the airlines don't care if you drive, ride a moped, take a pirate ship. They don't care, as long as you show up to work when you're supposed to. What's on the schedule? Let's talk about scheduling for a little bit. Now, don't get caught up in the details because every airline is different. They're going to display their schedules differently. They're going to have different bidding procedures. It's going to look different. Let's see, Southwest may have it on the computer. Another airline may want you to do it by the 15th. One airline might want you to do it by the 17th. One may want you to write it down on paper. Everybody's different. So don't get caught up in the detail. I'm just going to give you the overview of what bidding and what reserve and line holder means. Reserve versus line holder. There are 2 monthly schedules that flight attendants and pilots can have. One's reserve and one's called having a line. The line holder knows the trips, knows the places they're going, the time they have to be at work. They know the layovers they're going to have. They know the crew that they're flying with. A reserve, they know the days on and the days off. Think of reserve as being on call because that's exactly what you are. Similar to doctors, nurses, firefighters, you're on call. When the airline needs you, they will call you. So you must have your phone on you at all times while you're on duty, while you're scheduled to be on call. As soon as they call you, you've got a set number of minutes or hours to check in at your domicile. So if you are commuting, you need to be at your domicile the day before you go on call so that when they call you, you can get to the airport. Now, while you're on reserve, you don't have any idea about where you're going until you get that phone call, which for some people can be stressful, but it is also a whole lot of fun because you're going to get some really good trips. If a really senior mama calls in sick and she's got that wonderful, great trip that you could never hold, then guess what? You're going to get that trip. It's pretty exciting not knowing where you're going to go and being on call. So embrace it. It's not forever. You could be a senior person and want to be on call, and that's your prerogative. You can bid for it. But the longer you are with the airline, the less likely that you are going to be on reserve. Now, here's an example of what some reserve lines look like. And as you can see right here, this is a reserve line for the month of October going into November. So this person was on reserve, and then they have a line month. They're holding a line right here. So see, they've got trips in their line. Another example. This is a schedule at the month end, meaning they were on reserve after the month was over. They printed it out. And this will show you that while on reserve, they flew some great trips. They had recurrent training. They got another great trip. They didn't fly these 2 days. They didn't fly this one or these 2 days either. But they had some great trips. So see, this gave them this much time off. They had a week off because they didn't fly these two. Now they were sitting reserve, sitting on call, but they just didn't get called. It's pretty exciting. Here's an example of a partial reserve month. Okay, let's break down the schedule. Your line of flying, which is your monthly schedule, broken down into individual trips. This is from check-in to debriefing. And then within the trip, you're going to have flights, individual flights. Now here's a Southwest line of flying. This is, I believe, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13, almost 13 lines right here. This is an entire month right here in this line, as well as this one. This is what you base your bidding off of, are these lines, what you want to do. Looks very similar to the United Airlines line of flying. Again, this is an entire month right here. Here's an entire month. The larger airlines can have 500 different lines to choose from, and you put those in order of which ones you want, and then they're awarded by seniority. You will bid for your lines. Here's a Spirit line of flying, and this is a reserve line. And this is a trip broken down. Here's your trip. Here's one of the days out of the trip. And then here's one of the flights out of the trip. Now this is just an overview of the day, a day in the life of a flight attendant. It's very general, very broad, because the details are very specific within each airline of how you will perform each of these things, each of these steps, but this is a very broad overview. You're going to check in, brief, report to the airplane, check your emergency equipment, board the passengers, close the door, perform your flight or your service, land, door opened, deplane, debrief, repeat, or layover. Your layover may consist of 3 hours or it may consist of 56 hours. And then you repeat. Start over again. Your next flight. So, how do we get these schedules? You bid for them. Bidding is the process by which a flight attendant selects their schedules. A flight attendant bids each month for the next month's schedule. So, for November, you're going to bid for December. December, you're going to bid for January. And you know about 2 weeks before the next month begins. What can and what do flight attendants bid for? If there are 18,000 flight attendants, and there are going to be 18 different things and reasons that flight attendants bid. You can bid on the trip length. You can bid to do turns. You can fly out. You can go from San Fran to Chicago and back to San Fran and be at home every night. You may be an early person and you want 0500 check-ins. You may be a late night person, and so you want 2200 check-ins. That's your option to do that. Flight attendants bid for a variety of things, and you will bid for exactly what you need. Now, reserves, they bid for days on and days off. But once you're a line holder, you're going to bid for aircraft type. Days on, you might want to fly all 777s. You may want to fly with a friend of yours. So there are many, many things that you can bid for. So much information. I definitely understand that. So let's wrap it up. There are many airlines to fly for. Regional carriers contract with major airlines. Major and national aircraft carry more passengers than regional aircraft, therefore they are bigger. Major, national, regional, and corporate airlines give you FAA certified training. There are companies that do not train you and only hire flight attendants that have gotten their own flight attendant FAA training. Flight attendants bid for their schedules, and schedules are awarded by seniority. Schedules or lines of flying are unique to each airline. Every flight attendant is assigned to a base. The assigned base is where you begin and end your trips. Just because an airline lands in a city does not mean that city has a base or a hub. Flight attendants can commute to work using their non-rev flying benefits. What's next? Lesson 3, how can I get an interview?